All right, welcome back for part two of this amazing show in which we're going to find out exactly how this One Earth Army or this New World Order is going to form. And now you know the New World Order is a spiritual order of super soldiers, psychic super soldiers with superpowers. And as you're going to see in this episode, or this part two of this episode, that these people believe they're going to get superpowers. They believe that they're coming into the cosmos are changing and that this cosmic dust is about to come upon the earth that has been traveling through space-time for a long time, and that it's hit the earth in 2012. They believe that we're going to be charged with this spiritual energy with which they'll be able to convert people and connect them all spiritually. Again, they won't need walkie-talkies. They won't need satellite phones, I believe. And I didn't believe in the spiritual side of things. I thought men were just corrupt and that evil manifested through us and we fell victim to this sort of trap. But as we'll see, this spiritual hierarchy is about to take form. And again, it's formed in the shadows for years. Washington's full of them now. When you see how goofy they act in politics, please tell me you're not rooting for one side or the other. If you don't see that both of these sides are corrupt and that we're only offered two sides, there's something terribly wrong there, you guys. But these people have all given themselves up to reprobate mind. That spiritual hierarchy is about to spill out of the shadows and into the streets. And if you wonder how they pull off great big events like 9/11 and 9/1 Harvest Festival and on without cracking, the evil that these people subject themselves to is terrible. And if they don't go along with what is programmed for them to do, I believe their lives become horror movies. I put in I think in the Black Mirror playlist, I think I put this horror movie, and I think it was called Mirrors. Watch that, and I think that's what'll happen. Either way, it says once you take this evil on, that you will men will go 5 months and want to die but not be able to die. Well, if you become gods, like it says in Genesis 3:22, and you become as the gods when these things fill you, just like in Roman times, these Greek and Roman gods says they couldn't die. Okay, so when this demon comes in, and what if you run over by a tank, but you're not able to die because you have this power within you. But anyways, we're going to talk about we'll talk about it from a more scientific level, like we did in part one, in the science of scrying. We're going to start out with this book, Who Killed Bobby Kennedy? Who Killed Bobby by Shane O'Sullivan, The Unsolved Murder of Robert F. Kennedy, in which he identifies this Black Mirror trick with which they go into trances, and it's going to bring Project Monarch together. It's going to bring MK Ultra into this, all of this, but it's going to be very simple, so hang with me here. And I'm going to read to you here, and here's a picture of Sirhan. Sirhan, he was Israeli, and he was very mad and angry about Bobby Kennedy's decision to send these bombs into his country. But he loved Bobby Kennedy, but the mirror made him do it. You'll see Strathman lost touch with Sirhan while he was away working on the ranch, but after that he saw him 2 or 3 times before the shooting. And Sirhan had just had a horse riding accident because he was a small fellow, and it had destroyed his dreams of becoming a horse jockey. Sirhan told him the accident meant he couldn't be a jockey, and that seemed to embitter him considerably. He seemed increasingly restless, lonely, and depressed. He said school wasn't quick enough. He wanted a more direct route to success and talked of his interest of mystical powers in the occult. One night in a restaurant, he claimed he could conjure up a vision of his guardian angel for Strathman and his wife to see. When the couple confessed they couldn't see anything, Sirhan admitted his powers weren't fully developed yet. The last time Strathman and Sirhan saw each other was in front of Sirhan's house in April. He seemed extremely impatient and depressed. He didn't invite me into the house, which was strange for Sirhan. Strathman couldn't figure out what he'd done wrong, so I didn't invite him into my home either, and I stopped calling. That April, Sirhan's membership in the Rosicrucians lapsed when he failed to pay his $4 monthly dues, but he kept up his mystical studies. Whatever books he couldn't afford to buy, he'd read at Brighton's used bookstore in Pasadena. He tried out experiments from a book called Cyclomancy after ordering it through an astrological magazine. He explained in court that it was about white magic. You can do anything with your mind if you know how. How can you install a thought in your mind and have it become a reality if you want it to? The book gave some elementary exercises. One of them, sir, was to put your hand in a very hot pail of water and think cool. I know this sounds queer, but sir, the boiling water on my hand was cool when I put it in. I thought it was cool and I felt that it was cool. And I did it the other way around with ice cold water and thought hot. And I believe, sir, it was hot. He practiced other experiments at the desk in his room using a mirror and some candles to improve his powers of concentration. He placed a candle between himself and the mirror, and if he concentrated on the yellow flame for 5 or 10 minutes, he could change the color of the flame to whatever color he'd wanted. He also played with thought transference a bit. I was in my room, he said, late at night, and my mother was in bed, and just for the hell of it, I thought I would try it. I sent this thought message for my mother to get up and go to the toilet. I waited about 10 minutes and it didn't work. Nothing happened. I said, this is not going to work. Then I got into bed and started to doze. I kept that thought of my mother going to the toilet, and the minute I got into bed and radio switched on and all the lights in the house turned on, and about 5 minutes later I heard the toilet flushing. He was impressed with his new powers. Whenever I heard about it before, I thought it was a lot of baloney, but I said, I'll take you up on it. I'll try what you say. And it worked. Where did you feel it would lead you eventually? He was asked later. I didn't really know, except it would lead me to being a better human being, a better mind. So again, this is the trick, the deception is that we're going to become together as one, like it says on the $1 bill. One out of many, one. Sirhan remembered hearing news of it on KFWB All News Radio, his mother's favorite station, playing in her room next to his. It was the hot news. The announcer said that Robert Kennedy was at some Jewish club in Beverly Hills and that it was where he had committed himself to formally sending 50 jet bombers to Israel. What did that make you think? I thought Robert Kennedy was not all that good of a guy he claimed to be. It boiled me up again. Sirhan was still practicing his Rosicrucian studies in the mirror. He bugged me out to the point, sir, where I was concentrating in the mirror, sir. Instead of seeing my own face, I actually saw his face. Sir, I was that burned up about him. You actually saw his face? Again, sir, this is an illusion. I can't prove it, but I saw it in the mirror, his face. And if you watch The Science of Scrying, I used an NIH study to show you how if you stare in the mirror long enough, not just one of us, not just a couple of us, not just the psychic, any of us, if you watch the mirror and stare at yourself long enough in low, especially a flickering light, your face, your image will eventually pull away from you and create what's called in psychology a strange face illusion. It's actually incredible. You should go back and watch that if you haven't seen it. And then we go on here. This is the Sirhan home, and this is the mother here. Adele Sirhan unlocked the door and led the investigators to Sirhan's bedroom. Officer Evans and Sergeant Brandt searched in the presence of Special Agent Sullivan and Adel White. Lieutenant King and his men checked the rest of the house and the garage. The search of Sirhan's room revealed a large screen, spiral notebook on the floor next to his bed, and another spiral notebook on Sirhan's desk next to some candles and a mirror. The second notebook contained writings pertaining to the shooting of Senator Kennedy. And here's one of the entries in that journal. May 18th, 9:45:68. My determination to eliminate RFK is becoming more of an unshakable obsession. RFK must die. RFK must be killed. RFK must be assassinated before the 5th of June, 1968. And as you can see, these are very specific instructions. They also found a good deal of literature from the Mystical Order of the Rosicrucians, other readings on the occult, a brochure by Anthony Norville entitled Mental Projection. You can project things metaphysically right into being. Does that look familiar? With the Stargate project that was funded by and carried out by the CIA and the Army with your money. Here's another book by Mel Ayton, The Forgotten Terrorist. And there's a bunch of these. These are just a couple of examples, you guys. This stuff is everywhere. You can't search for it on the internet. Try using these search words. Mirror, trance, Sirhan. These are 3 things that should come easily, but you have to look terribly hard. And I've done that for you here on Judavision. So stay tuned and please subscribe and hit the like button if you're enjoying this right now before you forget. If Sirhan was lying and remembered the assassination, then how was the hypnotic defense constructed in the first place? Sirhan claimed that his lawyers first put forward the idea that he was in a hypnotic trance-like state when he shot Kennedy. So again, part of his programming, because we proved otherwise. But some evidence suggests that Sirhan had knowledge of amnesiac states before he committed the murder. So again, they programmed him to say that that was the case. Sirhan had read Truman Capote's In Cold Blood, a book about the murders of a Kansas farmer, his wife, and 2 teenage children. Perry Smith and Richard Hickok committed the murders in '59, and Capote's book about the murder, Manhunt, Trial, and Executions of the Murders, was published in '65. Sirhan identified with the short and stocky Perry Smith. He felt great empathy for Smith. Again, he was a jockey, so he was small as well. Smith, a small-statured man who suffered a deprived childhood, had bouts of shivering and trance-like states and believed in mysticism and fate. And I believe this is part of the same type of satanic programming that people like Kathy O'Brien have, and we'll get to that soon. According to Capote, Perry Smith had many methods of passing time, among them mirror gazing. Every time he saw a mirror, he would go into a trance. And again, this speaks to that NIH study in which this Jung, that was cited in that paper, had said the same thing, that people, he used the word possession, that they would become possessed by the mirrors after a while. Could you imagine how ugly your life becomes once you start seeing strange faces in the mirror and you're possessed by it and you can't look away? At the conclusion of his book, Capote quoted the opinions of leading psychiatrists, Doctors Joseph Satin, Carl Menninger, Erwin Rosen, and Martin Mayman about why people like Smith and Hickok committed such devastating crimes and what their mental states were like during the commission of the murders. The psychiatrists attempted to assess the criminal responsibility of a number of murderers who seem rational, coherent, and controlled, and yet whose homicidal acts have bizarre, apparently senseless qualities. This is exactly what happened, to pause here, with Stephen Paddock, who supposedly shot all those people from that Golden Tower right in front of Delano Tower on Mandalay Bay. They said he was this perfectly normal guy. Here we have the same instance, people who don't fit the mold of psychopathic, homicidal people. These people were seemingly normal. They were possessed by something. Something came upon them. In their examinations, the psychiatrists found a number of similarities between the murders, including the fact that the men they studied were puzzled as to why they killed their victims, who were relatively unknown to them. And in each instance, the murderer appears to have lapsed into a dreamlike, a dissociative trance, from which he awakened to suddenly discover himself assaulting the victim. And we've heard of this in satanic killings and stuff like this. 2 of the men reported severe dissociative trance-like states, and as we know from, again, that NIH study, that mirror gazing causes dissociative behavior, which is why things like Snapchat and these filters and stuff, which some of them are demons, are so disturbing. Again, the 2 of the men reported severe dissociative trance-like states during which violent and bizarre behavior was seen, while the other 2 reported less severe and perhaps less well-organized amnesiac episodes. Conspiracy advocates have here again where they brush everything under the rug in the very last sentence, and we're going to see this all through every excerpt we have in this piece. Conspiracy advocates have never been clear as to when Sirhan was supposedly hypnotized, which shows you this is spiritual once the initial initiation takes place. And some allege that Sirhan was missing from home for a 3-month period beginning in January '68, which I don't believe even matters. Yet his work records suggest otherwise. They allege a controller, probably the girl in the polka dot dress, manipulated Sirhan in the Ambassador Hotel, yet they do not explain how, during the weeks preceding the assassination, Sirhan was hypnotized. And we observe the same type of handler controller situation on the Ellen Show when this Jesus Campos, the guard who was supposedly shot in the leg while supposedly trying to thwart the killing, took place. So we observed the same thing. So he was on the Ellen Show and he had a controller next to him. He even had his hand on him and he looked like he was almost scared of him. So the alleged controller, probably the girl in the polka dot dress, manipulated Sirhan in the Ambassador Hotel, yet they do not explain how, during the weeks preceding the assassination, Sirhan was hypnotized. Their own experts believe Sirhan could have been a hypno-programmed assassin. So their own experts said that. Only if he was isolated for a considerable amount of time, they said, and subjected to brainwashing techniques. The conspiracy advocates' theories thus became implausible. To me, this one sentence says their own experts agree that this technology exists during this epic trial at the highest level of the courts. Shows you that the people on the other side that are running our country understand these mind control methods. Enjoy.
Drink your blue water, live inside your red clay, and eat your green skin. Carry my body through space and time. You are my connection to the universe and all that comes after. I am yours, and you are mine. I salute you.
After years of feeling like an oddball, Lynn had finally found a home. At last he was with men who prided themselves on being different.
Left shoulder, that's it.
These were the golden days for Lynn. There was something so noble and pure in Bill's vision that the Jedis felt inspired to be more than soldiers. In a world torn apart by greed and hate, they would be a force for good, for peace. For the first time in his life, Lynn felt truly happy. Then, into the garden, a serpent did come.
Then, into the garden, a serpent did come. And I want to show you the programming that they used while they just showed you this monarch butterfly flying off of this guy's finger. And that represents the monarch program. Let's watch it one more time.
There was something so noble and pure in Bill's vision that the Jedis felt inspired to be more than soldiers. In a world torn apart by greed and hate, they would be a force for good, for peace. For the first time in his life, Lynn felt truly happy.
You see what happened there? There's a retablo. Now, I've told you that this architecture, is including the only other Delano hotel is in Florida, and its tower is exactly this. It's a retablo. It is a black magic Solomonic altar. It is this. So you see the 4-in-1. You see the four corners have these squares on it. It's the same exact thing. It's a temple sort of thing. I don't know if it's a library, what it is, if you're a viewer and you know where they are right now. But again, they're referencing Genesis 3 here. Genesis 3:2, which is the knowledge of becoming God. I want you to watch this one more time now that you know the programming, and I want you to see exactly what they do here. They're telling you exactly how the knowledge of good and evil works in this goofy show.
The Jedis felt inspired to be more than soldiers. In a world torn apart by greed and hate, they would be a force for good, for peace. For the first time in his life, Lynn felt truly happy. Then, into the garden, a serpent did come.
It landed on a fruit. And then the serpent did come. And it's coming, you guys. I was recently golfing with a good friend, a dear friend of mine, who invited me to Carlsbad in California to go golfing. And they had been there, he and his wife had been there for a while, and they'd previously golfed at Monarch Beach golf links. And now we're going to learn, just by looking at the Monarch symbolism, that they use the same mirror technology, and I'll tell you how. I'm sitting there at the kitchen table, and as most golf players do, or most golfers do, there's a little bit of camaraderie and a little bit of elbow nudging. And he goes, the gentleman had just golfed at Monarch Beach, and he had a ball marker. I wish I'd have saved it. I did for a while, but I broke it, and I got something, went somewhere. But he gives me this ball marker, and it had this on it. It had this on it. And I had been really, really meditating on this whole mirror idea, and I'd seen this mirror imagery or reflective imagery in the Holy Grail, because it's a cup that has a liquid, whether it be blood or wine or whatever it is. whatever source it is, but they look at the ripples and see the future, but they get sucked in to this other world eventually, and on and on. I could give you example after example. It blew the Shugborough inscription, if you study the Holy Grail, out of the water, and if you probably already know where I'm going there with that. But if you look, so he threw me this ball marker, and I looked at it, and I realized, and it had the same exact logo on it, that these wings are a mirror image of each other, giving its significance to the CIA or whoever's even behind all these layers of onion, shows their change, their metamorphosis into this new creature through a mirror. And if you notice, it's also a retablos. It is also a retablos. So we know that in black magic and Solomonic magic, you got to use the retablos with the mirror. And look, 1, 2, 3, 4 quadrants on the wings and a head in the center. So it's really 4 and 1. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 quadrants. In the quarter has the same imagery as that eagle on it. So it's a 4 eagles on the outside. If you read the prophets, they all refer to these eagles, man. Read the prophets. I mean, I've got a great study again coming on the prophets, but that blows that out of the water. If you go to Butterfly Heliconius homepage, it says, are butterfly wings always symmetrical? It says, one of the things we have been asked several times at the Royal Society Summer Science Exhibit is whether butterflies always have symmetrical wing patterns. And this is almost always the case because the wing patterns are hardwired in the genome, and all cells on both wings have the same genetic code. So as we see, that's exactly where they get their significance. And Kathy O'Brien, again, is this breakthrough, brave woman who's been absolutely abused by the general public, by the shills and the trolls and all these people coming in to debunk what happened to her. Kathy O'Brien, or Kathleen Ann O'Brien, born December 4th, 1957, is an American author and speaker who claims to be a victim of government mind control program called Project Monarch, which she alleges was part of the CIA's Project MKUltra. O'Brien made these assertions in Transformation of America, written in 1995, and Access Denied for Reasons of National Security in 2004, which she co-authored with her husband, Mark Phillips. According to scholars, there is no credible evidence, here we go, the brush under the rug, for O'Brien's claims, and there are numerous inconsistencies with her story. Unbelievable. But the conspiracy narrative is thus, they give you, right after brushing that under the rug, doing a little damage control. In Transformation of America, O'Brien claims that as a child, she was first sexually abused by her father, as well as by a network of child pornographers. Supposedly, she was then forced by the CIA to participate in Project Monarch, which she claims is a subsection of Project MKUltra and Project Artichoke. According to O'Brien, under hypnosis, she was able to recall memories of sexual abuse of both herself and her daughter by international pedophile rings, drug barons, and Satanists, who we're dealing with now in the Mandalay Bay thing, who are all of this reprobate mind, who are all acting in unison, and I won't even name the other events. For people who are just naming them or being pulled off of YouTube, you do the math yourself. But this explains how all these people come together and do these evil, terrible thing. And again, they allegedly used a form of trauma-based mind control programming to make her a sex slave. I'm going to stop this segment here because, again, I want these to upload easily. And we're getting into some really interesting stuff because this dollar bill programming and this one world thing is going to come together, as well as the Babylonian Hindu religion, which is now programmed into our dollar bill for the new headquarters of the Mystery Babylon, the Great America. Join me for part 3 coming next. Thanks for joining. Don't forget, if you're watching this series, I know you like it, hit subscribe, hit like, and text this to a couple of friends, the link, because they're not going to find it on YouTube, and they're not going to find it on Google. The only way they're going to find it is through us, the Watchmen, and read Ezekiel and read what it says about the Watchmen, and perhaps you'll be more inclined to spread this good message. And thanks again. We'll see you in a moment.